Every building has a room with no number. You're not supposed to find it. I did. That's how this starts. With me standing in a silent hotel hallway at 2:13 a.m., staring at a door that shouldn't exist. I'm not the kind of guy who usually notices things like that. My job is to stay in hotels, review them for a travel site, and write up whether the pillows are too stiff or the breakfast buffet serves real bacon or the cheap kind. It's boring, safe work. This trip was supposed to be the same. 3 nights at the Marlowe Grand Hotel, an elegant, newly renovated skyscraper in the heart of the city. The kind of place with gold trim around the elevators, crisp-smelling sheets, and a concierge who remembers your name. But here's the thing. When I checked in, I was given room 1408, which, yes, I noticed because of that Stephen King story. I even joked with the receptionist about it. She smiled politely, handed me my key card, and that was that. The hallway to my room was long, lined with thick carpet that muffled every step. I passed 1402, 1404, 1406, and 1408, my room, directly opposite what should have been 1407. Except, there was nothing there. A blank stretch of wall. I didn't think much about it at first. Old buildings sometimes skip numbers, bad luck, superstition, whatever. I dumped my suitcase, took some notes for my review, and went to sleep. The first 2 nights were normal. I worked, explored the city, took pictures for the article. But on the 3rd night, last night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. I kept thinking about that gap in the hallway. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleeping, threw on my jacket, and went for a walk to clear my head. The hotel was quiet. I padded down the hall, listening to the soft hum of the building. When I reached the blank section of wall, I stopped. And there it was. A door. Not just any door, a black door. No number, no peephole, no handle. Just a dull brass keyhole that didn't belong in a modern hotel. It hadn't been there before. I swear it. I should have walked away. But when you spend your life traveling, you develop a bad habit. You want to see everything. I crouched down, peering at the keyhole. At first, it was pitch black inside. Then, movement. Something shifted in there, like a shadow leaning closer to the keyhole from the other side. I jerked back so hard I almost fell. When I stood up again, the door was gone. Wall. Just wall. I told myself I was overtired, maybe dreaming with my eyes open. I went back to my room, locked the door, and stayed awake until sunrise. The next day, I almost convinced myself to forget about it. But that night at exactly 2 a.m., I heard knocking. Not on my door. From across the hall, 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. I stared at the wall where the black door had been. My heart thudded. The knocking didn't stop. I opened my door just a crack, enough to peek out. The door was back. Only this time, the keyhole glowed faintly, like there was a light on inside. I should have closed my door. Instead, I stepped into the hallway. The knocking stopped immediately. I stood there for a full minute, waiting, listening. Then I reached out and touched the door. It was cold, so cold it burned. I leaned down against my better judgment and looked into the keyhole again. I wish I hadn't. On the other side wasn't a room, it was my room. Identical in every detail. The bed, the curtains, the half-empty glass of water by the nightstand. But lying in the bed was me. And the me in that bed opened its eyes. They were completely black. I stumbled backward, slamming against the opposite wall. When I looked again, the keyhole was dark. The door was just a door. I ran back to my room, locked every lock, and didn't move until daylight. This morning, I went to the front desk and asked about the room across from mine. The receptionist gave me a strange look. "There's no room across from yours, sir. Just a maintenance wall." I pushed. Then why did I see a door there? Black door, brass keyhole. She interrupted, her voice tightening. "Sir, for your own sake, I'd recommend you don't go looking for it again." Then she walked away. That brings me to tonight. It's 1:58 a.m. I'm sitting on my bed watching the clock. I can already hear the faint knocking, and this time, I think it's coming from inside my room. The first knock was faint. The second, closer. By the third, I knew it wasn't coming from the hallway anymore. It was coming from the wall behind my bed. I froze, every muscle in my body locked tight. My phone was on the nightstand, inches from my hand, but I couldn't move. The sound wasn't loud, it was patient. Like whatever was on the other side knew I could hear it, and wanted me to listen. The knock stopped. I forced myself to turn, looking at the wall. Perfectly normal beige wallpaper, a framed print of a city skyline, the kind of thing you never actually notice in a hotel room. Then, scraping. Slow, deliberate, as if metal was dragging across metal. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and shone it over the wall. Nothing, until I saw the picture frame. It was crooked, only by a fraction, but I knew I hadn't touched it since checking in. My hand trembled as I reached for it and pulled it away from the wall. There was a hole, a round brass keyhole, exactly like the one in the black door. I dropped the frame as if it had burned me. That was when the whispering began. Not words, not at first. Just the sound of someone breathing too close to my ear, muffled and distorted as if it were coming through water. Then slowly the breathing shaped itself into syllables. Let me in. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my suitcase. My phone's light caught the keyhole again, and I swear I saw a flash of movement, like a pale fingertip pressing against the other side. I bolted for the door, yanked it open, and ran into the hallway. My bare feet sank into the thick carpet, my heart slamming against my ribs. Across the hall, the black door was there again. This time it wasn't closed. It was open just a crack. I should have run to the elevators. I should have gone to the lobby, grabbed my bag and left the building entirely, but my legs took me forward, drawn to that narrow gap of darkness. The air around the door felt colder, so cold my skin prickled. I leaned forward, trying to see inside. It wasn't a room. It was endless, black, like the inside of a tunnel stretching on forever. And somewhere far, far inside that darkness, something moved. A figure. It was crawling toward me. I slammed the door shut, stumbling backward until I hit the opposite wall. My breath came in short gasps. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. For a moment, the only light was the glow from my phone. I turned it toward the black door. It was gone. Wall again. Just wall. The lights snapped back on. I stood there for a full minute, trying to convince myself I hadn't lost my mind. Then I heard it. Soft, dragging footsteps coming from inside my room. I ran. Not to the elevator, but to the stairwell. My breathing echoed off the concrete walls as I descended, my bare feet slapping against the cold steps. When I reached the lobby, the night clerk was gone. The desk was empty. The entire space was silent except for the faint hum of the vending machine. That's when I saw it. In the middle of the marble lobby floor was the black door, standing upright, no wall attached to it. Just there. The brass keyhole glinted under the fluorescent lights. I should have turned and left, but I couldn't. Some part of me, some stupid, desperate part, needed to know what was on the other side. I bent down, heart pounding in my ears, and looked through the keyhole. At first it was just my room again, empty. Then the bed creaked. The me lying in it sat up, slowly. Its face was pale, lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. And those eyes, black, no whites at all. It leaned forward, closer to the keyhole, until its mouth filled the entire view. "You're already in here," it whispered. I jerked back, and realized the voice hadn't come from the keyhole. It had come from directly behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. The lobby was empty. No one behind me. No one at the reception desk. No sound except my ragged breathing. And yet, the words still clung to the air, like smoke that wouldn't fade. "You're already in here." I backed away from the black door in the center of the lobby, but every step felt heavier, slower, as though I were moving through water. My vision wavered at the edges, the fluorescent lights above buzzing in a way that made my teeth ache. Then I noticed something that made my stomach turn cold. The vending machine across the lobby, its glass wasn't reflecting the lobby at all. It was reflecting my hotel room. I took a hesitant step toward it, my bare feet slapping against the marble. In the reflection, my room was dimly lit, shadows pooling in the corners. The bed was unmade, and sitting cross-legged in the center was me. Not the black-eyed version from before. This time, the other me looked exactly like I did now, down to the sweat on my forehead. He was just staring at the vending machine. No, he was staring at me. A sound broke the stillness, the gentle click of the vending machine coil releasing. A candy bar dropped into the tray, except, in the reflection, something else fell. A brass key. I didn't touch the tray, but the weight of metal dropped into my palm anyway. I looked down. There it was. Cold. Heavy. Old-fashioned. The key to the black door. When I looked up again, the reflection was gone. The vending machine was just a vending machine. But now, the black door in the center of the lobby had changed. It wasn't freestanding anymore. It was built into a wall that hadn't been there seconds ago. A hallway stretched beyond it, and from deep within that hallway came the sound of something crawling. Slow. Wet. I knew I should run. My instincts screamed at me to get out, to throw the key away, to never look back. But the moment I thought about turning around, my vision blurred again. The air tightening in my lungs like invisible hands were pressing in on me. It was as if the only way to breathe again was to open the door. My fingers shook as I slid the key into the lock. The brass was icy, biting into my skin. The click echoed unnaturally loud in the silent lobby. The door creaked open just enough for me to see. A corridor of black and white tiles stretching endlessly. Every 20 feet, a single bare bulb swung from the ceiling, casting shadows that seemed too large, too alive. The air smelled faintly of mildew and something sweet, almost like rot masked by cheap perfume. I stepped inside. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around. It was gone. Just more hallway. I started walking, the tiles cold under my feet. My breathing sounded too loud, bouncing back at me from walls that looked damp to the touch. After what felt like minutes, I noticed something ahead, a shape lying on the floor. As I got closer, my stomach twisted. It was a body, face down, wearing my clothes. I knelt down, my hands trembling as I reached to turn it over. But the moment my fingers brushed its shoulder, the head twisted, too fast, snapping around to face me. The skin was gray, the lips torn at the corners as if they'd been stretched too far. The eyes, pitch black. It grinned. "We've been waiting for you." Before I could move, more shapes emerged from the shadows behind it. Dozens of them. All of them wearing my face, all of them smiling. They started crawling toward me. I stumbled back, my heel catching on a loose tile. My shoulder slammed into the wall, sending a dull ache up my arm, but I didn't stop staring. They moved wrong. The black-eyed versions of me didn't walk. They lurched, twitched, and dragged themselves across the floor like marionettes with tangled strings. Their limbs bent at unnatural angles, joints cracking as they shuffled closer. Each smile was too wide, lips trembling with the effort to keep it stretched. I could hear the sound of their teeth grinding, like glass splintering under pressure. I turned and ran. The hallway seemed endless. My bare feet slapped against the cold tiles, my breath ragged in my ears. But no matter how far I sprinted, the single swinging bulb overhead stayed the same distance ahead, taunting me. Then I heard it. the sound of bare feet running behind me. At first, it was scattered, uneven, chaotic. Then, as if they'd agreed on some unspoken rhythm, all the footsteps aligned, a pounding, synchronized beat chasing me through the dark. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Bad idea. They were faster now, and closer. Their faces were shifting, still mine, but melting. Skin sliding like wax over bone, revealing jagged, wet muscle beneath. One of them was less than 10 feet away, its arms stretching longer than they should, fingers hooked like claws. Something deep in my mind screamed for me to not let them touch me, not even for a second. My chest was burning when I spotted it. Another door at the end of the hallway. Old, wooden, with a frosted glass window. I didn't think. I just threw myself at it, shoulder first. The door flew open and I stumbled inside. The air changed instantly. Warm, still, suffocating. I slammed the door shut, pressing my back against it, waiting for pounding fists or scratching nails on the other side. But there was nothing. When I turned around, my stomach dropped. I was in my hotel room. Same bed, same curtains, same view of the parking lot outside. Except, it wasn't night anymore. The sun was blazing through the window. My clothes were dry. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fresh linen. The clock on the nightstand read 11:17 a.m. I sat on the bed, my head in my hands. Had it all been a dream? Some bizarre nightmare triggered by jet lag? A knock on the door made me jolt upright. 3 slow knocks. I hesitated, then got up and opened it. Standing in the hallway was the receptionist. But something was off. Her skin was pale, almost gray, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. And her eyes weren't just black, they were empty. She smiled. "Checkout time, sir." Before I could reply, she stepped aside and I saw them. The black-eyed versions of me. All of them. Standing perfectly still in the hallway. Waiting. And every single one of them smiled in unison. I froze in the doorway, my mind scrambling for logic that didn't exist. They weren't moving. They didn't have to. The way they stood there, perfectly still, perfectly patient, was worse than if they'd charged at me. The receptionist tilted her head, the way a curious animal might study its prey. "They've been waiting for you." Her voice was the same, but wrong, like it was coming from the bottom of a deep well, muffled and distant. I stepped back into the room. "No, I'm not. Whatever this is, I'm not part of it." She smiled wider. "Oh, but you already are. You stepped inside their room. That makes you theirs." I glanced toward the phone on the nightstand. Maybe I could call for help, police, anyone. But when I reached for it, the cord wasn't connected to anything, just a frayed wire dangling uselessly. When I looked back at the doorway, the receptionist was gone, and the hallway was empty. My heart was still hammering when I slammed the door shut and locked it. I backed away, every muscle in my body buzzing with adrenaline. That's when I saw it. On the desk where my suitcase had been, sat an object I'd never seen before. A small, rectangular box, black wood, no seams, no hinges, and carved into the surface was my own face. Not just any face, my face from moments earlier, terrified, mouth open in a silent scream. I didn't want to touch it. Every instinct screamed to leave it alone. But my hands betrayed me, lifting the box, feeling the unnatural warmth radiating from it. The instant my fingers closed around it, a whisper filled the room. "We only need one more." I dropped it. The box hit the carpet with a dull thud, but the whisper didn't stop. It grew louder, filling my head, overlapping voices all chanting the same thing. I staggered back toward the window, but the view outside was gone. The parking lot had been replaced with a corridor, long, dark, with that same swinging light bulb swaying in the distance. A cold realization slid into my chest. The door wasn't the only way out, and maybe not the only way in. The bulb swinging slowed, and in the reflection of the glass standing behind me, I saw them again. Only this time, there weren't just 5 or 6. There were dozens. I spun around. The room was empty. The figures I'd just seen in the glass were gone, but the air still felt crowded, thick, as if they were pressing against me without touching. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe right. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed everything. And then, tap. A faint sound, like a single fingernail tapping wood, coming from the nightstand. I didn't want to check. Every nerve in my body told me to hide, to curl up and wait for morning. But something deeper, something I couldn't explain, compelled me to look. When I turned toward the nightstand, the box was gone. In its place was a key. An old brass key, tarnished with a red tag attached. The number printed on it was not 3B, it was 6. But here's the thing. This motel didn't have a 6th floor. Before I could question it, the tapping started again. This time from the inside of the bathroom door. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, steady, patient. I edged toward it, my breath shaky. The door was closed, though I knew I'd left it open earlier. My hand reached for the handle, trembling. The moment I touched it, something tapped back. I stumbled away, heart hammering, and then I heard it. Soft, almost tender. "You're late." The voice was right by my ear. I bolted for the front door, fumbling with the lock. But when I yanked it open, I wasn't looking into the motel hallway anymore. I was staring into that same dim corridor from the window, the one with the swaying light bulb. The key in my hand pulsed with warmth. The bulb stopped swinging, and in that frozen stillness I realized the figures were waiting at the far end. They weren't moving, not yet, but their heads tilted in unison toward me. The hallway was longer than it should have been, too long for any building I'd ever seen. The floor was the color of dried blood, with patterns in the carpet that seemed to move if I stared too long. The air smelled faintly of burnt hair and damp wood. The figures at the far end didn't move, but somehow the space between us felt like it was shrinking. My pulse thudded in my ears as the key in my hand grew warmer, almost hot, like it was urging me forward. I glanced behind me. Gone was my motel room. Behind me now was only blackness. Not a shadow, not darkness. Nothing. It was like the hallway had eaten the space I'd come from. A voice, low and hushed, echoed along the walls. "Come down." I should have run toward them, or away from them, anything. But my legs didn't listen to my fear. They carried me forward in slow, deliberate steps. The closer I got, the clearer their shapes became. 3 of them. All standing still, their skin a shade too pale, their clothes damp and stained. Their eyes, if they had eyes, were pools of pure black, swallowing what little light the corridor gave. When I reached halfway down, the swaying bulb above me gave one last flicker and went out, plunging me into darkness. But I could still see them. Not with my eyes exactly, more like they were burned into my mind, their shapes outlined in the same way you still see a bright light after looking at the sun. "You have the key," one of them whispered, though I couldn't tell which. Their voices weren't coming from their mouths. They were inside my head. I wanted to throw the key away, but my fingers wouldn't open. "It's been waiting for you." I swallowed hard. What has? The room. Before I could speak again, they stepped aside, revealing a door at the end of the hall. It didn't match the others. It was heavier, darker, with the number 6 carved deep into the wood. Something about it felt ancient, as if it had been there long before the motel existed. I took another step forward, but the ground beneath me changed. It was no longer carpet, but cold, damp stone. The air thickened until breathing felt like inhaling syrup. One of the figures leaned forward just enough for me to see their mouth, and for the first time, it opened. The lips cracked and split, as if unused for years. Once you enter, it remembers you forever. The words hit me like a weight in my stomach. My body screamed to turn back, but there was nowhere to go. The black void behind me was closer now, almost licking at my heels. The key pulsed again, harder this time. I reached the door. The carved number 6 seemed to shimmer, like the wood itself was breathing. I raised the key, my hands shaking so badly the metal scraped against the lock. When it slid in, it made no sound, not even the faintest click. The door swung open on its own. Inside was darkness so complete it felt alive. The air that poured out was icy, carrying with it the faintest echo of something breathing. I hesitated at the threshold. Then from deep within, I heard it. "Come in and see what you've forgotten." The 3 figures didn't follow. They stayed in the hallway, watching, their heads tilted again in unison. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. And then, the lights came on. But it wasn't the motel anymore. It was my childhood bedroom. The same cracked wallpaper. The same desk with a broken leg. The same bed pushed against the wall. Every single detail was perfect, right down to the stuffed bear with the missing eye. Except, this wasn't possible. That room had burned down when I was 8 years old. I took a step forward, my breath shallow. My hand brushed the desk, solid, real. From the corner of my eye, something moved. I turned and froze. Sitting on the bed was a small figure. Its legs dangled over the edge, swinging slowly. Its face was hidden in shadow, but its voice, I knew it instantly. It was my voice. "You left me here." The voice was wrong, not just in sound, but in weight. It carried a heaviness that pressed against my chest, like the air itself was accusing me. The figure on the bed leaned forward just enough for the shadows to peel away from its face. It was me. Not me now. Me as a child. 8 years old, same messy hair, same faded pajamas, but his eyes were wrong, 2 pools of bottomless black, reflecting nothing. "You left me here," he repeated. His tone was flat, but his words landed like a hammer. My throat tightened. "I don't understand." "Yes, you do." The boy slid off the bed. His bare feet made no sound on the wooden floor as he approached. He stopped just short of arm's reach, his head tilted in that same unnatural way as the hallway figures. "When the fire started," he said, "you ran. You didn't look back. You didn't save me." "That's not..." I stopped. My memory of that night had always been a blur of smoke and screaming, my father yanking me toward the door, the heat clawing at my back. But I had always assumed I was alone in the room. The boy's lip curled in something that was almost a smile. "I screamed for you." I shook my head. "You're not real. You're some thing this place made up." He ignored me and began to walk in a slow circle around me, his voice lowering to a whisper. "You always knew this place would find you again. Every dream you had about a burning hallway, every time you woke up choking on smoke, that was me." My skin crawled. The walls seemed closer now, the air heavier. The wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing charred black boards beneath. The stuffed bear on the bed twitched, its head turning toward me with a dry creak. "You don't belong outside," the boy said. "You belong here, with me." Something deep inside me, a memory I'd buried, began to stir. I had heard screaming that night. I had reached for the sound, but my father's grip had been iron, dragging me away. His voice had thundered in my ears. "Don't look back." But I had looked back, just for a second, and I'd seen... The boy's face was inches from mine now. His breath was cold. "Do you remember now?" My stomach lurched. "You're me. You're what I left behind." He smiled, and this time, it was wide. Too wide. His jaw seemed to unhinge slightly. "Not what you left behind. Who you left behind." The floorboards under us began to groan and buckle. The ceiling darkened with creeping shadows. Outside the single window, flames began to rise, licking at the glass. The air was thick with smoke, but it didn't sting. It just felt like it was sinking into my skin. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. identical to the one I still clenched in my hand. He held it up between us. "This is the only way out," he said. "But if you take it, I stay here, alone." I stared at him, my heart pounding. What happens if I don't? The smile vanished. His eyes, those bottomless black holes, bored into mine. "Then you stay, and we become the same again." The flames outside surged higher, pressing against the glass until cracks spiderwebbed across it. I didn't know if he was lying. I didn't know if there even was an outside anymore. But when the first shard of glass gave way and the fire spilled into the room like liquid, I made my choice. I grabbed his wrist. The moment my skin touched his, the room split apart, literally tore in two. The floor dropped away into an endless black pit, swallowing the bed, the desk, the walls. The boy's expression didn't change, but his voice twisted into something deeper, ancient. "You've chosen wrong." The pit yawned wider, and then we were falling. We fell for what felt like minutes, yet the darkness never shifted. No air rushed past me, no stomach-lurching sensation of descent. Just a slow, weightless drift into something far too deep for light to touch. Then, without warning, the fall stopped. My feet touched solid ground, but it wasn't the creaking wooden floor of the room. It was soft, damp earth. The smell hit me instantly. Wet soil, rotting leaves, and something metallic underneath like rust or blood. I was standing in a forest, but it wasn't alive. The trees were tall and twisted, their bark split and peeling. No wind moved through them, no insects sang. They were frozen in place, as if the world had stopped breathing. The boy stood a few feet away, his back to me. His pajamas were torn now, the fabric stained with something dark. He tilted his head to the side, listening to something I couldn't hear. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't turn. "It's where you end up when you don't belong anywhere else." I swallowed. "And where's the room?" "The room is always here," he said, almost absently. "It just wears different shapes. You saw it as a bedroom. I've seen it as a hospital ward. Others have seen worse." The last word hung in the air like a warning. I glanced around. Between the trees, I thought I saw movement. Shadows sliding from trunk to trunk, never fully stepping into view. "You brought me here," I said. He finally turned, and in the dim light, his eyes looked even blacker than before. "No, you brought yourself here. I just made sure you didn't forget." "Forget what?" "That you owe something." I took a step back. "I don't owe you anything." His smile was thin. "Not me." A low sound rolled through the forest, deep and vibrating, like a growl, but impossibly far away and close at the same time. The shadows between the trees seemed to pulse, growing darker. The boy looked over my shoulder. "It's almost here." My pulse hammered in my ears. "What's here?" "You'll see." And then I heard it. Soft at first, like fabric dragging across the ground. Then louder, a steady, deliberate rhythm of movement. Something was walking toward us. I couldn't see it yet, but the trees seemed to bend slightly, as if leaning away from whatever was approaching. The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't look at its face." The thing stepped into view between two trees. It was tall, taller than any person should be, and thin, its limbs impossibly long. Its skin was pale, stretched too tightly over sharp bones. Its hands hung low, fingers brushing the ground. It moved slowly, each step sinking slightly into the damp soil. I kept my eyes on its chest, forcing myself not to look higher. "What does it want?" I whispered. The boy's expression was unreadable. "Payment." The thing stopped a few feet away. I could feel it looking at me, the weight of its gaze like cold water running down my spine. It raised one hand and pointed directly at me. I took an instinctive step back. "I don't even know what you are." The boy stepped closer to the creature. his black eyes locked on mine. "It doesn't matter. You've already been chosen." The creature took another step forward, closing the space between us. The forest seemed to hold its breath. And then, the boy smiled wider, and the ground beneath my feet gave way. I was falling again, this time into something colder, wetter. Water swallowed me whole, icy and dark. My lungs screamed as I fought my way upward, searching for air. When I broke the surface, I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was back in the room. But it wasn't the same. The bed was gone. The walls were blackened, burned, and in the center of the floor was a trapdoor, slightly open, faint light spilling from the crack. From beneath it, something whispered my name. The whisper came again, clearer this time, drawn out and breathless, as if whoever was speaking was right below the floorboards. "Come. Closer." Every instinct in me screamed to run, to get as far away from that trapdoor as possible. But the air in the room was thick, almost heavy, pressing me down. My legs moved without my permission, each step pulling me closer to that faint strip of light leaking from the crack. The smell hit me before I got there. Damp stone, old wood, and the faint copper tang of blood. The boy wasn't in the room anymore. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaking. Silence. I crouched and touched the edge of the trapdoor. It was warm, unnervingly warm, as if the space below wasn't just lit. It was alive. The wood throbbed faintly beneath my fingers like a slow heartbeat. I should have stopped. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. I pulled the trapdoor open. The hinges groaned, and a wave of heat rolled up from the opening. Below, a wooden ladder disappeared into a narrow shaft. The light wasn't from any bulb or torch. It was this soft, pulsing glow, shifting like embers under ash. Something deep inside me whispered, "Don't go down there." But the voice from below said, "You've already started. You can't turn back now." I gripped the ladder. The wood felt slick, almost oily. My first step made the whole thing creak like it hadn't been used in decades. I climbed down slowly, the glow growing brighter with each step, my shadow stretching unnaturally long against the curved walls of the shaft. After what felt like minutes, my feet touched the ground. I was in a tunnel. The walls were stone, but they looked wrong. Wet, glistening, and shifting slightly, like muscle under skin. And then I realized the light wasn't coming from any fixture. It was coming from veins in the walls themselves, glowing faintly red, like blood pulsing through capillaries. The whisper returned, this time behind me. I spun around. Nothing. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice echoing far too loudly in the narrow space. No answer, just the sound of water dripping somewhere ahead. I followed it. The tunnel curved and narrowed until I had to crouch to keep going. My palms scraped against the walls, and they felt warm and slick, like touching the inside of something alive. The dripping sound grew louder until I reached a small chamber. In the center was a pool, not water, but thick, dark liquid that steamed faintly in the glow. And floating above it, suspended in the air, was the boy. His head hung forward, his arms limp at his sides. His black eyes were open, but unfocused. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice a whisper. He lifted his head slowly, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. "I'm not supposed to be here," he said. "Neither are you." Before I could ask what he meant, the surface of the pool rippled. Something was rising from it, tall, thin, and impossibly pale. The same thing I had seen in the forest. It stepped fully out of the liquid, its skin slick and dripping. The heat in the chamber intensified, my breath coming in short gasps. The boy's voice trembled. "It followed us." The creature tilted its head, its movement slow and deliberate. It didn't speak, but I heard it, inside my head. "You opened the door." My knees weakened. "I didn't mean to." "You did." It stepped closer, the heat radiating off its body like a furnace. "And now, you can't leave." The boy screamed, the sound sharp and raw. The pool beneath him surged upward, pulling him down. His small hands clawed at the air, but in seconds, he was gone. The creature's black eyes locked on mine. Next, it lunged. Everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the tunnel anymore. I was lying on the floor of my apartment. My apartment. For a moment, I thought it had all been some kind of nightmare. The cold wood beneath my cheek, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. It felt safe, normal. But then I noticed the door to my bedroom was open. I never leave it open. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady, and glanced at the clock on the wall. 3:03 a.m. The exact same time I had first heard the whisper. I walked toward the bedroom door, my heart hammering in my chest. The light was off inside, but the faint glow of the street lamp outside filtered through the blinds, casting thin lines across the floor. Something was standing in the corner. It was too tall to be a person. Its head brushed the ceiling, its limbs long and thin, fingers dragging against the floor. Why? My voice was barely a breath. The figure didn't move, but the air in the room seemed to shudder. Then I heard it, inside my head again, cold and heavy. Because you opened it. I shook my head. The trap door. The boy. They were never trapped. They were waiting. I stepped back. My heel hit the hallway wall. Waiting for what? The figure tilted its head. For someone to bring them home. Before I could speak, the shadows in the room began to move, crawling up the walls and spilling across the ceiling like liquid. They converged behind the figure, forming something massive and pulsating. And then I saw them. Eyes. Hundreds of them. All black. All staring at me. The figure stepped forward, and the eyes moved with it, spilling into the hallway, stretching toward me. I bolted for the front door, but when I yanked it open, it wasn't my building's hallway outside. It was the tunnel from before. The same glistening walls, the same pulsing red veins. I turned to run back inside, but my apartment door was gone. Just more tunnel. The whisper returned, surrounding me now. You belong here. I backed away, my breath ragged. No. No, I'm not. The air grew hotter. The walls pulsed faster. And then the boy's voice came from the darkness ahead. You came down. You don't get to leave. He stepped into view. Only it wasn't the boy anymore. His face was pale, stretched too thin, his eyes entirely black. Behind him, the pool from the chamber bubbled and frothed as if something beneath it was trying to claw its way out. He extended his hand toward me. It's time. The ground beneath me shuddered. The tunnel walls closed in, forcing me toward the pool. And somewhere deep in my mind, I realized this was never about escape. The moment I touched that trapdoor, I'd been claimed. I was going in. The ground tilted beneath me as the tunnel walls pressed closer. My boots scraped against the wet, vein-covered floor, but it was useless. The thing was herding me toward the pool. The boy, if I could still call him that, stood beside it, arm outstretched, his black eyes glistening like oil. You opened it, he said again, voice calm, almost pitying. Now it needs you. The air smelled like metal and rot. The pool's surface rippled, but the movement wasn't natural. It was breathing. Slow, deliberate, patient. I'm not going in there. My voice cracked, but I stepped back anyway. The shadows lining the tunnel recoiled at first, then shot forward, whipping around my wrists and ankles like chains. My skin burned where they touched me. The boy tilted his head. It's been alone for a long time. It's hungry. The ripples in the pool deepened. A shape rose just beneath the surface, something vast, its outline shifting and breaking apart as if it couldn't decide what form to take. You don't even know what it is, I spat, though fear made my words weak. The boy smiled, too wide, skin stretching in ways it shouldn't. No one knows. That's why they keep feeding it. The shadows yanked me forward, dragging me until my knees hit the slick edge of the pool. My reflection on the surface wasn't mine anymore. The eyes staring back at me were black, and my mouth hung open in a silent scream. What happens if I go in? The boy crouched beside me. You don't come back. Not the way you think. He leaned closer, his cold breath on my ear. And every time someone calls your name, it will answer. The shadows tightened around my throat. My vision blurred. The pool's surface began to rise, forming a column of thick, glistening liquid. Inside it, I could see shapes moving. Faces, limbs, all twisting and merging into one another. Some were screaming. I realized they were the missing people. Before I could react, the column lunged, wrapping around my chest like a wet, living rope. It pulled, and I felt myself sliding toward it. My boots scraped against the floor, finding no purchase. Stop fighting, the boy whispered. It'll hurt less. Somewhere in my head, a voice, not my own, whispered, let go. But then I remembered the trap door, the way it had opened so easily, like it wanted me to find it. The voice in my head wasn't the creature, it was the thing that had lured me here. And suddenly I had a thought. If this thing was hungry, maybe it could be distracted. The shadows tightened again, but I managed to twist my body just enough to grab the boy's arm. His skin was cold and slick, but I dug my nails in and yanked him toward the pool. His smile vanished. No! The column shifted instantly, abandoning me and wrapping around him instead. His scream echoed through the tunnel as the liquid pulled him under, the shadows around my limbs evaporating. I fell back, gasping for air. The surface of the pool went still. The boy was gone. But before relief could hit me, the water began to ripple again. And then it spoke. That was not enough. The shadows erupted from the pool, spreading along the tunnel walls, reaching for me once more. The shadows slammed into me like a tidal wave, pinning me to the cold floor. My lungs burned as I struggled, but it was useless. That was not enough. The voice was everywhere. Inside my head, in the walls, in the very air I breathed. The pool began to rise again, but this time it didn't form a column. It shaped itself into me, my face, my body. But its eyes, black and endless, stared at me with a hunger I couldn't comprehend. You can't take me, I rasped. I already have. I glanced down and froze. The hands pressed against the ground weren't mine anymore. They were pale, stretched, and wet, with long black claws. My reflection in the slick stone beneath me wasn't me. It was the thing from the pool. The realization slammed into me like ice water. It wasn't trying to consume me. It was replacing me. Why? My voice was shaking, breaking. The shadow me stepped closer, smiling with my own lips. Because you came when it called. You opened the door. Memories I'd never lived began to flood my mind. People disappearing, standing in the doorway of apartment 3B, but it wasn't me. Whispering to strangers to come see something strange. It hit me. The trapdoor. The whispers. The strange compulsion to keep exploring. It had all been planted. It needed someone to lure others here. A recruiter. The shadow me leaned in, close enough for its wet, cold breath to wash over me. You will feed me. Forever. The pool surged forward, swallowing me whole before I could scream. The cold was absolute. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, only hear the distant muffled cries of the others trapped here. And then, I was standing in my apartment. The air smelled normal. My hands looked normal. My phone buzzed with a notification. It was like nothing had happened. But as I walked to the mirror, I saw it. My eyes, just for a moment, turned black. And I smiled, because I knew exactly who I was going to invite over first.